Hey, you guys, welcome to the live show. Um, this is, I think, episode 82 or 3 of the Dr. G show. I should probably know that by now. I should probably look that up each time before I start. So, hey, as you guys come on, please feel free to share this with your friends. Hey, Tim. Hey, Robert. I'm glad you guys are joining. Please share this if you will, or like it also. Tonight's topic, we're going to talk more about epigenetics. So a few weeks ago, I took that genetic test, that 23andMe. So I still haven't got it back, but when I do, we're going to cover that. So hopefully that'll be next week. I'm really hoping. And then last week, what we talked about was the chemicals that kind of mutate DNA. So we started out by talking about that DNA is not your destiny, that we really are just constantly changing our DNA, fixing our DNA, and it's only when you have this much damage and this much repair do you end up with a mutation that ends up sticking around. So what we want to do then is say, how do we create it to where we have this much repair and this much damage, and then we reverse that mutation or fix that DNA damage. And our body is designed to do this all the time, all day long. And as we mentioned before, the number is 10,000 DNA repairs every single day for each cell. So that's huge. And I actually was looking up some epigenetic research before the presentation, and that example I give of like, this much repair and this much damage, or this much repair and this much damage, you'll either end up with a chronic mutated disease or you'll reverse that disease. And the research article had the pictures in there that actually explained that, which I downloaded a few. Maybe I have it on here. I'll drag some of these into our feed as we go through. I do want to put, I don't know. No. Let me see if I can drop one in right now. No, it wants to leave the page. Okay, we won't do that yet. At the end of this, I'll add some pictures for you guys, and then you guys can kind of have an idea of what we're talking about as we get through this. And let's see here. So when we talk about repair, I'll mention some big words, but for the reality, it's just your body's going to figure this out if you feed it the right stuff and stop poisoning the cells. It just works on its own. So, most people are constantly reversing DNA mutation all the time. I think there was a study where they looked at lots of people from car crashes and incidental deaths that weren't like cancer. And they found out that most people all have cancer, just little tiny seedings of cancer. But it doesn't mean that we end up with cancer. It means our body fights through that. And people that maintain things like cancer are only going to maintain it if they don't constantly repair it, or they're exposed to too much toxicity. And last week when we were talking about, we talked a lot about things like, you guys remember what the chemicals are? So name, if you guys would, name like the most common chemical for DNA mutation, especially when we talk about like leukemia, lymphoma. That's one of the most notorious for those. And usually when I look up, kind of make a report for a patient, I always look at, what are the things that mutate that specific DNA. So if they have like a methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase pathway, or an mTOR gene, or whatever the gene mutation is, I always look up and try to see if I can find research to where it says what exactly causes that mutation. And the hardest one was the STK11 gene, or LBK1 gene for Peutz-Jeghers. And that one ended up being a specific pesticide that they use in Drosophila, or fruit flies, on oranges. So that gets sprayed on there, if you don't buy organic oranges, you get exposed to that chemical. And in a certain percentage of people that are genetically susceptible, they're going to end up with this kind of chronic mutation of that specific gene. And then the outcome is actually that they'll end up with all kinds of different cancers. So the first rule is always stop causing the problem. Not manage, stop causing the problem. So if we can identify those chemicals, and no one's guessed yet, but like we had last week, I noticed that the feed wasn't going through. Like I can see you guys joining, but for some reason, it's not always showing what you guys say till the very end. So I'll let you know. So guess, but benzene is the most common one. So benzene, which is the flammable part of gasoline, that's the one that we make nylon out of. We make synthetic clothes out of. Now this is all cotton. I got rid of, like, I think all my plastic clothing, all those golf shirts and stuff. Now they're all cotton, old school. So with that, what we want to, oh, what was it? There was xylene. We'll do that. Oh, there's one more that we talked about in that category. Xylene, butene. You know, and you looked at, someone had lotion the other day. It's kind of scattergoring here a little bit, but they had some kind of spray-on lotion, and in there had butene. That's crazy. That's butane's from petroleum. You know, if you drink that, you'll die. But if you spray it on your skin, and 90% that's going to absorb into your tissue within 10 minutes. And so then your body has to then combat all that DNA mutation. So Kirshner says, I found out that I have methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene mutation 2 years ago. So I've been eating a diet for that. So that's what we're talking about today is dietary changes for DNA methylation, ubiquination, sulfonylation, acylation, and do one more? I think that's it. All histone modification, but so that's a good point. So if you guys aren't aware of that one, that's the one that we're doing our research on. And the folate, to be metabolized into its active form, has to go through this enzymatic pathway through this gene, and that gene is the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene. That gene is the most inappropriate sounding gene in the whole genome of the body, right? 25,000 genes, and this is the name that they came up with, or at least the abbreviation for that, which is just incredibly awesome. So if you're a guy, it just makes you kind of giggle each time. And so if there's a mutation in that gene, then what happens is that folate can't metabolize down into 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate, then to 5-methylene tetrahydrofolate, which is the active form, or kind of people call methylfolate. So then you have to change your supplementation for that. That's going to affect all kinds of things for certain people. You know, you can have that, I think we said that before, the C677T, or you can have the 1298 mutation for the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. You should get like a bonus every time. You should get like drinking game every time I say that. Like, people take a drink. So if they have that mutation, if they have one, it's heterogenic. You know, it might be like a 30% chance or 40% change in folate metabolism. So again, just because you have these mutations doesn't mean you end up having disease or consequences from them. But for people that do have consequences, it is messed up, and this is like a lifesaver for them when they figure that out. So I think I have a gene mutated for my HDLs. I had to do that research when we did the cholesterol, and I showed you guys all my labs, which my blood sugar and everything was rock star, my kidneys and liver, right? But my cholesterol, the HDLs were like 16, which is crazy low. But there's a very rare genetic mutation that actually will impair your ability to make HDLs. So luckily, there's good LDLs, the large fluffy ones that are type A or A pattern. Those at least are protecting me. But So it'll be interesting if I can find that gene on the back end of the 23andMe report for that. So, all right. So when we talked about those chemicals, right, like coal tar and even aspartame and saccharin and artificial colors and benzoic acid, MSG, those things all are on a long list of things that mutate DNA on a constant, regular basis. So what do we do to fix that? And the nice thing is, and I say that, I told you my most expensive book, or one of my most expensive books, was Nutrients and Epigenetics. It was just the most boring research book ever of like, here's how you're going to reverse mutations with food, right? So I put together a kind of a treatment package for that based on that information, but when we go through this, it'll be kind of simple, really. It's not what Americans do, but it's kind of what the rest of the world do. So every time we have DNA repair, or say DNA damage, right? It's either going to increase the cells, or it's going to shut off cells that are necessary, or it's going to change gene outcomes, so protein outcomes. And so it's either going to increase aging or things like cancer or disability. So we have this constant need then for this very basic dietary stuff, these bionutrients, to actually reverse all that mutation that's going on. And in America, we of course make it worse because we basically just make everything out of chemicals instead of real food. So, our strawberry shake at McDonald's is like about 44 different chemicals, most of which come from petroleum to make it taste like strawberry. But pretty much anywhere in the world you go get a strawberry shake from McDonald's, it's from a strawberry. That's where they get the flavor from. So we use toxic mutating chemicals. So as Americans, even if we do our 80-20, like we're eating 80% really good, 20% kind of well, we better be kicking ass on the nutrient part. So when we talk about these foods, I really want you to think about diet. Like, what can we do to introduce that into our food all the time? And you might notice that a lot of these are pretty much every other diet in the world except for America, but you just eat like everybody else instead of America. So with methylation, we said on the cytosine on DNA, there's these little CG islands where if there's a little methyl group, which is just a little cluster of carbons, it'll turn on or off the gene, right? So we have 20 to 25,000 genes. And not all of them are turned on. Sometimes, you have an oncogene, which is, onco means cancer, like an oncologist. You don't want an oncogene turned on. You want that silenced. So sometimes if it's methylated at that one place, that might silence it, versus another place, it might turn on that gene. So we talked about the idea of having webbed fingers and toes and tails last time. So sometimes genes turn off and on. So we don't necessarily want to just turn them all on or turn them all off, if that makes sense. So part of what we do that with is methylation. So there's very specific foods that are methyl donors. And that means when we eat those things, we actually can donate a methyl group. And I'll throw in some supplementation in here too. Kind of like Krishna was talking about, when you have that methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, if you're really symptomatic with that, then you do have to supplement. And that's why when people do like B12, they don't want to do cyanocobalamin. They want to do methylcobalamin. Because when they convert that homocysteine into methionine, you want that methyl group then to go methylate DNA. And luckily, whether it's people have issues of hyper or hypomethylation, the body will normalize based on what it needs. So you just put the ingredients in there and it should work. And so far, it has. So, all right, so your big methyl donors are things like B6, B2, B12, and folate, which is B9, which is a good one for cancer prevention, right? It's actually called B9, like the 9. And those create other methyl donors like methionine, which we said is made from B12, and then choline, and then betaine. And that choline, betaine, and serine, those are kind of regulated in that homocysteine cycle that we kind of talked about, which is way more than you need to know, I guess, but for the nerds in us, that's that part that then goes and regulates and makes phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine for brain function, memory, let alone for turning on and off genes. So even the choline in your eggs, right? You get a nice free range poultry egg, I don't know, egg, right? It's going to be full of choline, and that choline then can actually methylate your DNA to help turn on and off genes that are supposed to be that way. And Brianna says, can any of the Bs be harmful if taken when not needed? Oh, B vitamins are very dangerous. No. B vitamins are not dangerous. Okay. So no, there's only one B vitamin that you really have to worry about. Otherwise, we've done some really high targeted nutritional therapies with those and have gotten amazing results for a few things that are kind of untreatable. So I've been pretty excited about that. That's like more orthomolecular kind of treatments. But B6 is the only one by itself that you probably have to have any kind of consideration. And I think it's like 3,000 milligrams for like 3 months, which is just an astronomical amount. Something like, this is a horrible brand, but this is B6, and you can see like it's 100 milligrams. So you have to take 30 of those for 3 months. That'd be crazy. And then you get some neuropathies, that kind of thing. So if you took, well, I don't know. When I was doing research, I was doing my literature review. I told you I took way too many of those. Because if you take those when you think you need coffee, you'll be up and you will not crash. You will just be like, I'm up. You know. So if I have to stay up all night or I have to do something really late and have to be high functioning, I always use B6 by itself. But I took probably 15 in one day. And at like 3 o'clock in the morning, it felt like there was locusts in my ears. It was like, and I was like, holy crap, I think I took way too much. So B6 is the only one that you can probably take a little too much of. Because you will stay up all night, which is probably counterproductive. But if you take way too much, then you're going to end up with maybe some neuropathies. But you'd have to do it long term, like 3 months, to really cause any kind of damage. Otherwise, that B6 is going to convert S-acetylhomocysteine, which is on the back end of the homocysteine cycle, into glutathione, which a lot of you guys might know is your detoxification pathway. So, you know, a good dose of that, you know, so people take like coenzyme B complex or 100, 200 milligrams of that, especially if it's reduced P by P. They're going to end up getting way more benefit that way through glutathione production. And if you think about this with glutathione is what takes Tylenol or acetaminophen from a very toxic, I think it's NADQI, very toxic liver-destroying chemical, to a non-toxic metabolite. It's all glutathione dependent, which is why if you go to the ER, they give you NAC or N-acetylcysteine because that converts directly into glutathione. But since 52% of all liver failures are due to that one drug, acetaminophen, and it's glutathione dependent, glutathione is dependent on B6, you can pretty well guess that most Americans are not getting enough B6. And so same thing, beans, greens, fermented foods. It's your gut bacteria that makes your B vitamins, not meat, but gut bacteria. So lots of good healthy bacteria. So feeding those methyl donors feeds a whole pathway that regulates mood, sleep, brain function, all that. It's a wonderful pathway. Sorry. The bioactive foods, We talk about beans, greens, fermented foods. Also genistein, which in diazidin does this too. Those are both from soy. Now, soy gets a bad rap in America because America does things like we chemicalize our food, say that's fine, but don't eat this one real food, right? Potatoes are going to make everybody fat unless you live anywhere else in the world. So we eat 150 pounds of sugar, then we say don't eat potatoes. We take a bunch of synthetic estrogens, drink a ton of dairy with tons of estradiol in there, and then we say stay away from soy because it might be bad, right? But soy's bad rap comes from phytoestrogens, which are the same ones that are in coffee and flax and chia, fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and berries, legumes, greens, right? So it's actually a weak estrogen that protects against the damaging effects of the stronger estrogens. So that's why countries that eat soy end up having less cancer. But especially when it comes to DNA reversal or DNA polymerase editing out mutations, it's a very important part of that. So that genistein in there actually have very small doses. So you're only talking like 2 tablespoons of soy a day in the healthiest country. So don't maybe overdo it, but you also shouldn't be consuming any kind of genetically modified soy. So soy is inflammatory. It's not high omega-6, just like corn is. But if you eat just small amounts, like a little bit of tofu, a little bit of tempeh, that's fine. Just don't be one of those like that book Skinny Bitch, which I don't know where the book is. I think a patient stole that. You stole my book, you got to bring it back. But that book, basically, they said, meat's processed, it's gross, they're doing all these horrible things to it, so eat this processed vegan stuff. So it's just the same crap. It's just a bunch of, make a turkey taste like, make a soy taste like a turkey, a soy make taste like a hot dog, or how about you just eat meat or don't eat meat, right? So that's where things get a little dicey. People just, that's all they eat is nonstop fake meat, like transvestite meat or something. So the other foods with that would be green tea. And also like retinoic acid, so you divide beta-carotene foods. So orange foods, yellow foods, red foods, those are also going to be ones that they break that down, then go to the skin, create vitamin A, and then that helps go and reverses DNA mutation too. So that's a good one. So that's methylation. So methylation is really strongly based in 3 categories: beans, greens, and fermented foods. So do Americans eat fermented foods? Do you guys eat fermented foods? All right, so I'll talk all night, okay? So let's stop. And I'm seeing some of the posts come through. But if you guys eat fermented foods, what are they, right? Like my favorite's kombucha. And so, and then kimchi. I like kimchi, but I like it best at Beautiful Day Cafe because they don't put MSG in there. And it's a very mild kind of kimchi. It's a very white kimchi, right? So like someone like me is like, oh, I'm eating Korean, but it's not so spicy. So kimchi, and then kombucha, and pretty much every country has their fermented foods, but America really doesn't. We sterilize our foods, and that puts us at a greater risk of not being able to repair DNA or methylate DNA, turn on and off genes because of that. So you can't buy French cheese because it's alive. Yeah, so Tammy, sauerkraut, right, the angry German, that's a really good one, especially Bubby's brand. It's living. That's what you want, not the canned stuff, but the living stuff. Old school in a crock jar is like the best. Which, by the way, for anybody who complains it's expensive to eat healthy, it is dirt cheap to ferment cabbage. Like crazy dirt cheap. You just need a martini, a jar, a little S thing that you buy on Amazon for $2, gas trap, and then you just shred the cabbage up, and then you put it in water with 2 tablespoons of salt, and then you put a lid on there, put the gas trap on there, and then you just leave it for a week, and voila, You have beautiful purple red cabbage. It's so great. Dirt cheap. So, but if you don't want to make it, you can always buy it, which is nice. Oh, Tammy says the daughter's boyfriend makes it for them. That's awesome. That's really awesome. That's a good boyfriend. What's up with that? That's a good guy. So, French people have cheese, Korean kimchi, the Japanese have natto, which is gross. Who's had natto? Have you guys? That's like incredibly great for your heart. It'll break up scar tissue. It has nattokinase in there. It's really good for you, but I don't know. It's going to take a little time to get ready for that one. Basement chemistry. That's right. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so we said for the main methylators, we're really looking at like organic tofu, organic sprouted tofu, tempeh, natto, green tea, and beans and greens and fermented foods. Then we have a whole list of other things that has to happen. So once we methylate, that's just on and off. That's the light switch, right? So every little, take that DNA, you have your 25,000 genes, and then within those genes, you have certain cytosines that either do or don't have a methylated switch on them. But before each gene, you have a little thing called a histone, and it's wrapped around that, kind of like a bobbin and thread wrapped around. That bobbin would be the histone. And the histone tells the DNA polymerase, or the thing that's going to replicate the next strand to make a duplicate copy, it's going to have the kind of code that says, hey, this is what this should look like. That way you don't have any mutations in your DNA. That way we don't have that little hiccup when it's making that DNA, because all it's got to do is match T to A and C to G. It's not that complicated, but it's still making mistakes. So, so there's, with histone modification, there's three main processes that have to happen. And that's acetylation, ubiquination, phosphorylation, and then sulfonylation. Yeah. That's a good to know word. But what those do then is regulate the translation of that next strand of DNA as it's being replicated. There's three main genes then that are affected by this. And typically when I do any of this kind of stuff, those are the three genes that I love. Brianna says Bubby's pickles. Yeah, that's right. Bubby's pickles are fermented. That's right. Vlasics has food coloring, which is neurotoxic, and plastic in there, polyethylene glycol. It's ridiculous. So this one gets a little bit interesting. So the HDAC, that gene modulator, is regulated by two major things. The first one is garlic, and you can probably throw onion in there, but garlic is a base of just the, like, that's so crazy, right? Like, garlic is what regulates your DNA translation. Garlic. That's what feeds that thing, right? So there's a specific micronutrient in there that it's looking for that feeds that HDAC pathway or modulator. The other thing is butyrate. Now, butyrate's interesting because we talked about this before, and again, we talk about, and I was wrong because I think it's changed now. It used to be like, I was thinking colon cancer was #1 for men and women, and then prostate for men and breast for women. But now it's breast and prostate. So estrogenic or dairy and plastic cancers are the most common cancers by far now. And then it's a couple others, and then colon. But colon cancer, back in the old days, it was just like, they talked about colon cancer as the cure is fiber. There you go. All right. So something so simple, fiber, is what cures colon cancer. But if you look at the vast majority of Americans, what we eat 2,000 pounds of food a year, we're not eating any fiber, right? Especially if people are just all meat kind of people. Well, they're not getting much fiber that way. Oh, which Christy, not Allison. So that's one of the 100 bioactive chemicals, or really one of the 1,000 chemicals that are in garlic. So it's a good one, but you really want garlic. So you don't want to supplement with Allison for that. Although it probably does help the DNA too, but otherwise, for infections, absolutely, that's great. It has but really garlic by itself is going to be as effective too. So, except maybe ear infection, you probably do a lot of Allicin, some essential oil or something like that. Maybe a little olive oil, it's a pain reliever, frankincense, something like that. Yeah. All right. So, when we eat fiber or fruits and vegetables, that fiber binds to 80% of the sugar, because again, the way you reverse type 2 diabetes is through fruits and vegetables. So the sweet fruits and berries reverse type 2 diabetes. But you have people all the time that say, "Oh, it's sweet, it's full of sugar, it's gonna make diabetes worse." Nobody had diabetes from Adam and Eve to about 1950 in America. It didn't exist until we consumed 150 pounds of added sugar to our diet, like the maltose and maltodextrin, all that crap. So it wasn't until we consumed all that before we caused the sugar storage disease. So again, it's not sweet food that did it. It's sweet food that we created. So those sweet natural foods like fruits and vegetables and berries, those 80% of that sugar that's in there binds to that fiber that we don't digest. And that creates that fructooligosaccharide. That feeds our gut bacteria. So we have to have a healthy gut bacteria. Then that creates butyrate. That same chemical that we just said, butyrate. Then that goes and feeds DNA polymerase, and that helps edit out mutations in your DNA. So that's one of the biggest reasons why butyrate is so important. So it doesn't matter whether it's colon cancer or anywhere else, butyrate is what helps prevent cancer, and it's from, or DNA mutation, but that's from fruits and vegetables, especially sweet ones. So garlic and butyrate is what regulates the HDAC. And then we have the SIRT. And the SIRT modulator, the chemicals in there are things like resveratrol, which you guys probably have heard of course. Brianna says, what do you mean by plastic cancers? So estrogenic. So plastic is very estrogenic. Pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, colognes, perfumes, styrofoam, plastic drinking things, they're all estrogenic, and those are all ones that help mutate DNA. That makes you have to really be up on your repair. So resveratrol, do you guys know where that's from? It's from two sources, but that comes from one. It's actually in several things, but post that, you guys know it. And then I'll continue on here. But butene, fisetin, quercetin, lutein. Lutein is like lutein, so brightly colored. So all these are just kind of basic ones. We'll talk about the foods, but just think, eat the rainbow. And then the HAT gene, or the histamine acetyltransferase. Curcumin, garcinol, and theophylline. All three wonderful names. All right, Christy won, right? Grapes. So dark red grapes, dark purple grapes, dark Concord grapes are going to be making red wine. So every time you drink red wine, you're changing your genetic structure with that. We said green tea, and we said red wine, And half the world drinks green tea, the other half drinks red wine. And America drinks sodas and beer and black tea, which is oxidized tea. So, oh, so Brianna, okay, so are all cancers estrogenic? No, no. Estrogenic cancers like breast, prostate, uterus, endometriosis, all those. That's not a cancer, but ovarian cancer. Those estrogenic cancers are estrogen. Yeah. So that's. I'm glad you pointed that out. So with curcumin, you guys probably know by now is turmeric. Curcumin is 1/10 of the active ingredient in turmeric as a supplement, or sorry, as a food, right? So put a little bit of turmeric in all your food. It's one of the most powerful anti-cancer medicines, and it's partly that way because it knocks down inflammation, which is what damages DNA, but then it also helps repair the DNA. So it's like a double-fold or two-fold way of helping repair DNA. It's a wonderful thing. Garcinol, that's from garlic again, and then theophylline is from green tea. So, like we said before, white tea, yellow tea, green tea, oolong tea, black tea, it's all the same tea. It's all the same plant. They pull the top 3 leaves, throw it in the basket, and then they oxidize it, and as they oxidize it, it gets darker. So it goes from white to yellow to green to oolong to black. But green tea, white tea, yellow tea is medicine. It reverses DNA mutation. Every time you drink that theophylline changes the genetic structure. So all those things that, you eat a good healthy diet, you're trying to be a good person, you're using like essential oil perfumes and colognes and stuff, and using the Cure shampoos and conditioners, and you're trying your best, but you're still exposed to constant amount of toxicity in America. So every little bit counts. Remember, it's just reduce toxicity, increase repair. So drinking that green tea instead of black tea changes that genetic structure and adds to the benefit. Let alone, women are more likely to have heart attacks than men in the United States now. You did it, right? And studies show that women who drink 3 to 5 cups of green tea can reduce heart disease by 50%. That's huge. One food, that's huge. Let alone the theanine that's in there, plus the little bit of caffeine, which is less than chocolate and less than soda, and half as much as black tea, and about 1/10 of what's in coffee, or maybe a 1/5 to 1/8 or something. No, that's not right. Because it's 25, yeah, about a fourth to 1/8 of what's in coffee. So I mean, it's like 25 milligrams caffeine versus coffee can be up to 200 milligrams caffeine. So with that, the theophylline makes us smart. Oh, sorry, the theanine that's in there mixed with that 25 milligrams caffeine literally makes us smarter and our brain function better. So makes us fire on all cylinders. People ask me like, it's almost 8 o'clock. I've been well, not today, but today I've been doing paperwork and stuff. But usually I'm seeing patients all day, and then I do my show, and they're like, "How do you do it all?" And I go home and it's like, "Oh, let's make a martini and make some meals and do this kind of stuff." But I just, drinking green tea and eating healthy and lots of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and berries and snacking on nuts, and you just feel good. You just feel good and energetic, like things are working. So that I love green tea because of that. And what people do is they'll do this stuff. They'll be like, "Oh, I feel great," and then they'll like have one bad night or something. They're like, "I'm tired, so I need a coffee." So they get a coffee, and then they start slowing down from that. So then they got to take something else, and then they go back into that same cycle. So I always think tea, green tea. So then foods that are modifiers of all 3 of those genes. Garlic, fiber-rich foods, so fruits and vegetables. Brassicas, which we'll talk about. broccoli specific for the HDAC gene, and then horseradish. So I love horseradish. That's good. And then for the SIRT, it's grapes, chard, kale, spinach, mustard greens, beet greens, green greens, apples, tea, green tea, onions, nuts, berries, blueberries specifically, elderberry, loganberries, all those really dark ones, sweet red peppers, celery, parsley. Those are all things that regulate specifically the SIRT gene. And then the last one is that HAT, and that's okay, I put my cups in front of my sensor there. It was the boogeyman. The boogeyman's getting us. All right. Oh man, we have a patient, their daughter. I put that on top of the skeleton when she comes in because she will not come into the room. She's scared of it. Hopefully she's not watching because she's going to be terrified. Okay, so then with HAT, it was very general, like turmeric and then green tea. And there is poison ivy. That was one of them. But who's eating poison ivy? That's crazy talk. So foods that are very specific that you'd want. So this is what we do in general for our patients for like epigenetics. We want to focus on things like parsley and celery, which is pretty easy. Turmeric, red wine, apples, garlic, onions, nuts, berries, blueberries, beans, and dark greens. At least 1 tablespoon of organic tofu a day or tempeh, something like that. 3 cups of green tea. Eggs, hopefully like free range. Not free range vegetarian, just free range. And then fiber-rich food and liver. And then one of the last things that we talked about was something called brassicas. Does anybody know what a brassica is? It's like a whole bunch of different foods. I'll give you a hint. They're cruciferous. So that's funny. Does that help? Probably doesn't help. So cruciferous vegetables, you just say crunchy vegetables. All right? So broccoli, so these are the ones. Okay, brassicas are the most critical overall in your diet. And if you look at this diet, I mean, this is the Asian diet, this is the Mediterranean diet, this is the African diet, this is like every other country but America diet. But these are the specific brassicas that are the best. So broccoli, Brussels sprouts, which are awesome, cabbage, do purple or red, cauliflower, which they have purple now, collard greens, kohlrabi, kale, bok choy, which they said bok choy is going to be the next superfood. I don't know if it is or not. Chinese cabbage, Napa cabbage, basically any kind. It says cabbage on there, probably pretty good. Rapini, turnip greens. Why would it be turnips also? You can eat it with hummus or roast it with mixed vegetables. Rutabaga, mustard greens, rocket or arugula, and daikon radish. Man, daikons are awesome. If you like radishes, they're like taking a radish and they stretch it out like that long. So it's like a long white radish. Those are awesome, especially if you can get kimchi, fresh kimchi that's made with daikon. Oh, that's the best. Then horseradish, which wasabi is horseradish, but you want real wasabi, which is green horseradish. Otherwise, most horseradish that's green in America is just green food coloring, which is neurotoxic, with your awesome horseradish. So then the green causes DNA mutation, and then hopefully the horseradish helps undo some of that mutation. Maca, which is a bush that grows on the border. Radish. Virginia pepperweed, which I've never heard of. and watercress. So watercress is awesome. I like when you're hiking and you come across that stuff. All right. Now, hey, as we go through this too, please share this with your friends and family, of course. Hopefully next week, I'm hoping I'll get my DNA report back. And so I'll probably post some of that stuff for you. But we'll go through and figure out what my heritage is. And am I photogenically going to sneeze? And do I have a cleft in my chin? And some of the other weird stuff that they have on there. Maybe we'll make a trivia game out of it and have a prize. So the only last thing on here is this chart here. It's a supplemental one. So choline, well, let's start at the top. So methionine you make from SAMe through B12. But it's also in sesame seeds. So tahini, that's in hummus. Or if you just eat sesame seeds, Brazil nuts, which is great for your thyroid because it has 100% of your selenium. Fish, so wild-caught fatty fish, salmon, tuna, halibut, mackerel, cod, sardines. Peppers and spinach. So that's, you can see that's a meal. That's food. That's a whole lifestyle, right? Folic acid, beans, greens. Oh, baker's yeast, or not baker's yeast. Don't worry about that one. Brewer's yeast. Brewer's yeast is chock full of vitamins. It's really great stuff. And then B6, we talk about beans, greens, fermented foods. It's also nuts and vegetables. SAMe, which is one of the most popular dietary pills, but like supplements in America, that's because it regulates mood and sleep. Serotonin becomes melatonin for sleep through SAMe, but SAMe is made through B12, so you're back to the same thing. Eat beans, greens, fermented foods if you want to sleep. And then choline, we said egg yolks, but it also has in here cooked beef, chicken, turkey. So again, your free range, wild caught, that's still fine. Betaine, spinach, ginseng, we talked about that. Oh, the sulfur from garlic, onions, and broccoli, or cruciferous vegetables. Butyrate, we said some fiber, and then DADS is from garlic. But listen to what some of these do here. So enzymes that help transfer methyl groups from SAMe to DNA. Donates methyl donator, breaks down toxic byproducts, removes acetyl groups from histones to improve health. That's kind of like a cleanup mechanism. Like genistein, which we talked about, was from soy, organic, increased methylation, cancer prevention, and then broccoli, cruciferous ones, increased histone acetylation, turning on anti-cancer genes. So that's pretty dope. I mean, those brassicas literally turn on anti-cancer, anti-oncogenic genes. And then butyrate increases histone acetylation, turning on protective genes to increase lifespan. The more fruits and vegetables we eat, the longer we live. And then the DADS through garlic and onions increase histone acetylation, turning on anti-cancer genes. So think about that, like really crunchy cruciferous vegetables, garlic, onions. That's Mediterranean diet. So not only do you end up with the diet for the least amount of heart attacks, but you also have the least amount of cancer. Most cancer charts, if you look at it, it goes like this. So this much cancer, like that. So the countries that are more like America now, stuff we import back and forth, they're suffering like we are. Anywhere we export our food, cancer rates go up. But if you look at those other countries like the Mediterranean ones, well, why are they not having those problems? Why do Chinese men not have prostate cancer? But yet a Chinese man that's Americanized has astronomical rates of 1 in 2 risk of having prostate enlargement and getting prostate cancer. Well, that's ridiculous. It's the same genetics, but we changed how much we abuse those genetics in America. So I hope this wasn't too like I did a course through Melbourne on epigenetics, and holy crap, that was way up there. So I hope this stuff makes sense. But what I like about this talk is really when it comes down to it, all that complexity, you don't have to know how any of this stuff works. You just need to know how to eat to get rid of it, and what you need to stop and replace so you stop causing it. And really, that's the simplicity of the balance. That's why goats don't have to figure out how to get rid of cancer, and dogs don't have to balance their hormones, and horses don't have to figure out how to get enough protein. No animal has to figure out how to eat, right? A brontosaurus didn't have to figure out how to eat enough protein, right? He's not eating cows and rhinoceroses and donkeys, right? He's just eating plants. So most of what we want to do to fix is simplicity. Simplicity cures, complexity sells. So the more complex we try to make things, to say, well, it's only this specific thing, well, it's probably not that true, right? Do the healthiest, happiest, longest living populations share these things? Do animals do these things? And does it make logical sense? It's like, yeah, okay, that's probably real then. So feel free to keep posting questions on here. I think I did awesome last time. I answered those right away. But I'm glad you guys attended. Now next month, we're going to try to talk about hormones. I think we're going to have Holly back on, and we're going to talk about, should we do hormone replacement therapy, whether it's synthetic or bioidentical. We're going to talk about how you make hormones. So, and all those stupid myths, like where they say, well, you don't make hormones anymore because you're postmenopausal, or you had a oophorectomy, or you had your ovaries out, or hysterectomy. That's bullcrap. That's not true. So what we want to do is cut through all the bullcrap, say, look, you got the parts, make it. So even if you get those parts taken out for hormones, they're just made in a different place. And it means lifestyle is that much more important for you to feel healthy, happy, hormonally balanced. That's what you want. So, all right. Anything else, you guys? I thank you guys for being here. Well, we've been doing this for quite a while. I thoroughly enjoy interacting with you guys. And if you have more show ideas, let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate all the feedback that you guys have. And feel free to share this and like it with your friends. And I hope this really helps. In a country where basically the World Health Organization said that the risk of cancer should be 1 in 1, this is going to make a big difference in people's lives. It really should make a big difference, because you may not be able to control everything, but you can control what you do. And this is one place you have a choice. So, all right, you guys, thanks for joining me. Dr. G Show. I'm outie. Bye-bye.